everyone, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club. Welcome to my channel. Tonight we're going to be continuing with our playthrough of the Lamps Are Going Out World War I. It is currently the winter of 1914. I have one correction to make, and that was during the Russian production phase, so we'll move down to that area and correct it. During the Russian production phase, I sent a transfer through Romania to Serbia of one point. Well, it costs one additional point when you go through a neutral area to send production by transfer, so I didn't have 2 points. So what we're going to do to correct this is we're going to remove that 1 point transfer from Serbia that I gave, and we're going to use that point to construct a Russian army, and that'll be a spent army. So we'll place that in the Ukraine. That'll be the 12th Russian army, and that is spent. That will be all the corrections for the previous video. It's now the winter of 1914. We'll be starting that turn, and Turkey is going to declare war during the Central Allies phase of this turn. We'll begin the turn sequence with Germany, and he'll begin by drawing an event card. The event is revealed to be card number 23, and that's the Hindenburg-Ludendorff team, 1914 to 1915. Roll 1 extra combat die for up to 2 German attacks this turn from either Prussia or Posen, but not both. If drawn in 1918, draw 1 more event card. Alright, so that is going to help us in our quest to retake Prussia from the Russians. That's great. We'll move on to the movement phase, and currently we have 3 armies in the Rhine, plus the fortifications in the mountains, so I think we're pretty good there. In Belgium, we have a total of 5 armies that we're ready to use to strike against the Somme. Now the problem is the Russians have taken Prussia. If we don't retake that, we're going to lose that production. So I'm going to have to transfer a minimum of 2 armies to Posen, and with that, hopefully we can kick them out of Prussia. So I'm going to have to weaken the Rhine. So we're going to transfer over the 10th Army from the Rhine to Posen, along with the German 5th Army from Belgium, and that might be enough to retake Prussia now that we have this Hindenburg-Ludendorff team card. That will be very helpful. It's going to, unfortunately, pretty much we will not be able to kick out the Allies from the Somme, and I'm hoping that if the Allies launch an attack on the Rhine, that our fortifications in the mountain area will be enough to protect us. We'll just have to see. But I have to retake Prussia, there's no doubt about it. Now we do have the opportunity to sortie the German High Seas Fleet from Wilhelmshaven, but I don't want to do that quite yet. I'm kind of waiting for the right opportunity to challenge them. Problem is we can rebuild these fleets, but it's extremely expensive. If we were to lose both of our fleet counters, we're talking about 6 production points to get those back online, and I'm not in a position right now to be able to afford that, so we're going to hold off on that. And I think we're going to leave the 2 full-strength U-boats that we have in the unrestricted submarine warfare box. So now we're ready to move on to the combat phase. And we'll begin with our East Africa campaign, and Letov Vorbeck is going to use his guerrilla war tactics, and he's going to attempt to strike on the forces of the British East Africa Army. So he'll be rolling 1 die, and on a result of 5 or 6, he will be successful, and he's going to cause a loss to that army. And here's the attack from Tanga. The result is a 6, and he's successful. So what that's going to do is that will spend the British East African Army But Leto-Vorbach's force is not spent, so that is great. We've got some success in Africa. That's fantastic. Now we're going to switch to the Western Front. Now I don't have the ability to, I don't have enough forces in Belgium to actually take the Somme, but with the 2 German heavy artillery units that we have, I'm hoping to damage the French and British armies in the Somme enough where I won't have to worry so much about a counterattack. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to nominate the 3rd Army for attack, and we're going to spend one of our German heavy artillery counters. We'll flip that to its spent side. Now that counter allows us to roll 2 dice and choose the highest of the 2 for this attack. So the Germans will be rolling 2 dice, the Allies 1, and I think we'll use the French 2nd Army as the defender. Now the British have tactical air superiority over the Somme, so if we end up with a tie result, in this case the defender is going to win that. So we'll have to see what happens here. Okay, here is the roll. In that case, Germany won 6-1. So we have spent that army. And the French 2nd is also spent. And more importantly, Germany's going to gain the big push counter. All right. And I think we're going to continue the attack. And I'm going to nominate the German 2nd Army. So we're going to spend that. And then we have to decide if we want to use the heavy artillery yet or not. I think I'll keep that in reserve until we start getting down to the last attack. We do have the big push counter, so we'll be able to get a +1 die roll modifier for that. So the German 2nd Army will attack the French 6th Army. Okay, here's the roll. All right, Germany has a total of 3. 2 + 1 is 3. Allies have 3, but they have tactical air. So they're going to spend their tactical air counter, and that's going to allow them to win the battle. Normally the attacker wins on ties, but with the tactical air, the defender wins. So there's no damage to the French 6th, and we've lost our big push counter. All right. And I think Germany's going to continue the attack. We are going to commit the 4th Army and the German heavy artillery. That'll allow us to have 2 dice. And once again, I think we'll target the 6th French Army. So we'll be rolling 2 dice for the attack. We'll see if we can get that big push counter back. Okay, here's the roll. And in this case, we won 6-3. So that is going to spend the French 6th Army in the process. We have 1 unspent army left, and we've reclaimed our big push counter, so I think we'll try to take advantage of that. I'm going to rebuild those armies during the production phase anyway, so the more damage we can do to the French Franco-British army in the Somme, the better. All right, so we are going to nominate now the 1st German Army. That'll be spent. And we're going to attack the French 5th Army. We'll be getting a +1 for the big push. Germany won that 7-5. So the French 5th Army is spent in the process. And all that remains is the BEF. We have no more armies for us to continue the attack, unfortunately, but we did make some gains on the Western Front for a change, which is great. Now Germany is going to attempt to retake Prussia and the port of Königsberg. So we're going to be doing a battle there, and we're going to be using our Hindenburg-Ludendorff team card, which is going to give us 1 extra combat die for up to 2 German attacks this turn from either Prussia or Posen. We're going to be attacking from Posen, so that'll give us 2 attacks there, which is great. I'll mark those 2 additional die
for the attacks with these damage markers, and as I use them, I'll take them off. All right, in this case, we have a total of 3 unspent armies in the region. So I am going to nominate the German Third Army, and they will attack the Russian Third Army in Prussia. So we'll make our roll. And roll 1 extra combat die for up to 2 German attacks this turn. I think we'll use it right now to try to get our big push counter. So we'll be using one of those, and we'll be rolling 2 dice for the attack. Okay, here's the roll. Germany won the battle 4-2. That's going to spend the German Third Army and the Russian Third Army. All right, that's also going to give us the big push counter, which is fantastic. We're going to continue the attack, and I think we're just going to use the Ludendorff card one more time. So we'll spend our last use of that. It's going to give us 2 dice with a +1 die roll modifier. So we'll nominate the 10th German Army, and that'll be attacking the 1st Russian. Okay, here's the roll. In this case, Germany has a 2 + 1 for the big push is 3, and Russia has 3. So it's a tie, and we're going to win the tie. So that's going to spend the German 10th and the Russian 1st. All right, we have 1 unspent army remaining, and if we can win, we're going to be able to drive them out. So we'll have our last attack. That'll be the German 9th will be spent. And we'll be targeting the Russian 1st, and we get a +1 for the big push. Here's the roll. And unfortunately, Germany lost that 4-3 for Germany, so they won't be able to extricate the Russians from Prussia, unfortunately. Made a good effort, but not enough. All right. All right, we'll move on to the production phase, and we're still under the blockade. So we're going to resolve, if there were any active events, we would resolve those at this point. Now we're going to resolve our U-boat attrition. We have 2 unspent U-boats in the unrestricted submarine warfare box, so we'll be rolling 2d6 for each of them to find out what the effects of the naval war in the North Atlantic are. Here is the first roll. Roll is a 7, and it says spent if convoys are active. Well, they're not. So that first U-boat has been able to escape undamaged. Here's the second roll. That time we rolled an 8, and it says spent if the Western Allies' U-2 technology is active. It is not. So both U-boats remain unspent in the unrestricted submarine warfare box. That's great. Now we'll move on to the production phase. Germany's going to gain 12 production, but the Russians have taken East Prussia, and that has a factory there. So Germany is going to lose 1 production because of that. So we only have 11 now. All right. And we'll begin by doing our refits. And I think we definitely have to refit all these armies in the Belgian front. It'll be a total of 4. So we'll be spending 4 points for that. 5 will get us 1. We have 7 remaining. And we're going to definitely have to refit all of our armies on the Eastern Front. It'll be a total of 5. Leaves us with 2. That would be sufficient for us to either build a new army or try to give some help to Austria-Hungary. And yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I'm going to think about that. I think Germany is in good enough shape, so we are going to transfer the 2 production points we have remaining to the Austrians. So we'll exchange those 2 production tokens for 2 production transfer to Austria-Hungary. Now we're going to move on to our technological advances. We currently have A1 technology, so any other 1 technology or A2 technology, if we draw that, we'll be able to keep that card. And unfortunately, we've drawn a P2 card, synchronized machine guns. We don't have the P1 technology yet, so that card is returned to the deck and shuffled. It's very important that every time you make a draw from the technology deck that you shuffle it. All that remains for Germany is our regroup phase, and we're going to reset our heavy artillery. All right. So going to our turn sequence, we finished with Germany. We'll move on to the Western Allies. And we'll begin with their drawing of an event card. Western Allies draw card number 25, the Old Contemptibles, 1914 to 1915. Place on the British First Army BEF. Reroll all defensive dice once. Remove the marker at the end of 1915 if not used. Yeah, the term Old Contemptibles was actually used as a pejorative by the Kaiser against the British. He said that they were a contemptible little army, and so they adopted that as their war cry, so to speak, the Old Contemptibles. So we're going to mark the BEF with the Old Contemptibles marker. Now we'll move on to the Western Allies movement phase, and we'll have to make a decision here. We have really no offensive capability in the Somme anymore. That's been kind of blown out by the German attacks. But we do have a viable force in Verdun, and we could turn that against Alsace-Lorraine, Rhine. I guess for our movements, we'll use sea movement to move the British Fifth Army from England to France. So we'll put that in the Somme. That actually gives us 2 offensive armies we could use against the Germans in Belgium. One of them being the Old Contemptibles. There are no viable French units that we can move. We could move the spent French 10th into Verdun. And if we do choose to make that attack, give us a little bit of, I think we'll do that. We'll move that into Verdun. And then I'm going to see if I would not authorize the attack into Alsace-Lorraine at this point. There's fortifications there, plus they have mountainous terrain. But we'll see what the response table tells us. So I am going to order no attack from Alsace-Lorraine into Alsace-Lorraine from Verdun, but we'll see what the response table says. That says 1, it says no and. So not only are we going to not hold position, they're going to make a big push into the Rhine. That's what that die roll would indicate. All right, so we'll organize this and see what happens. Well, we have to attack the German fortifications first. So we're going to nominate the French First Army, and they're going to make an attack on the German trenches. Germany is going to gain a +1 for the mountainous terrain in the Rhine. So this is going to be tough. Okay, here is the roll. And the Germans have won 7-2. So that will not allow the trenches have not been breached. And that First Army is spent. Well, the French are going to try it again. This time they're going to use the Third Army against the trenches. Germany gets +1 for the mountainous terrain. And this time the Allies have won 6-4, and that is a breach. So the trenches have been breached. And that's going to spend, that does not spend the Third Army. That's right. So we have a successful breach into Alsace-Lorraine. And we could start attacking those German armies now. And the die roll that we had from the response table indicates that we want to do that. So we will continue. The French Third Army is going to attack the German 7th. So it is going to be spent this time no matter what. Germany still gains the +1 for the mountains. We do not gain a big push token from the trenches. All we've done is basically neutralize those forward defenses. So Germany still has a +1 with this attack. And the Allies have won 6-4. That is going to spend the German 7th Army. And now the Allies are going to gain their big push counter. So that's going to equalize now the German terrain defense advantage that they have. They're going to continue the attack, or they're going to nominate the 4th Army, and they're going to attack the German 6th. And this time it's a straight up roll. +1 for France and +1 for Germany for their mountain defenses. And that's a tie, and the French are going to win that 3-3. That is going to spend the German 6th Army. We might be in trouble here. There is one unspent French army remaining, and I think they're going to try it. So, once again, it's going to be a straight up roll, +1 to each side. And we'll see if it's successful. The French 9th Army is spent. A massed attack against Alsace-Lorraine, and here is the roll. And it's a tie, 7-7, and that means that the defender has lost, and Germany has to evacuate the Rhine. Now the German units can retreat to different areas, and I think that's what we're going to do. We'll have the German 6th retreat to Bavaria, the German 7th retreat to Hanover, and now the French 9th will have to advance. And I think they would just advance everyone there. Verdun is not adjacent to Belgium, so the Germans would have to punch through that complete line in the Somme. And well, maybe we'll leave one unit behind. We'll leave one unit behind so we don't we can take advantage of those trenches and things there. All right, the trenches are gone now, and Germany has lost another production center. So I think that is going to end the Western Allies combat phase, and France is overjoyed. They have recaptured Alsace-Lorraine from the Franco-Prussian War of 1871, and they're ecstatic. Cries of "Vive la France" can be heard from the Swiss border to the English Channel, coming up and down the line. So we're going to move on now to our production phase. And we're going to begin with the U-boat attack table. We'll see what the damage is to English shipping in the North Atlantic. We have 2 active U-boats in the unrestricted submarine warfare box. 2d6 roll for each. And the first one is a roll of 8, and that says success if unrestricted warfare and increase U.S. entry marker 1 space if the Sussex pledge is in effect. It is not. So that is going to inflict 1 point of damage on the British shipping. Make the next roll. This time the roll is a 10, and that says success if Germany has U-1 technology active. They do not. So only 1 point of damage against the British economy will be in force. And now we move on to receiving our resource production, transfer production. And that's going to be the 2 points that France got from England last season. So they're going to get 2 for that. And now they're going to gain their normal production of 4. So we'll give them 4 more. A total of 6 production. All right, definitely they are going to be refitting those armies in the Rhine. So they're going to refit a total of 4 armies. It's going to cost them 4 production points. They have 2 left, and they're going to use those to refit, I think, 2 armies in the Somme. That'll be the 6th and the 2nd will be refit. That's going to be all of France's production points. We'll move on now to England. England's going to begin with a total of 7 production, but they're losing 1 because of the unrestricted submarine warfare, so they're down to 6. And the first step is refits. They have no refits other than the British East Africa Army. So Letov Vorbeck is making England commit resources to the secondary East African theater. They're going to spend 1 resource point to refit the East African Army. All right. England has 5 production points remaining, and they're going to build the British 4th Army. That'll cost 2 production, and that'll leave them with 3 remaining. All right. I think they're going to spend 2 points, and they're going to attempt to help the Serbians by giving them some production transfer through Greece. So England is going to spend 2 points and give a production transfer to the Serbs, which will equate to 1 production point for them. We have to spend an additional 1 to go through the neutral country of Greece. That leaves us with 1 production point left. And they're going to spend that point giving aid to France. We'll give France a production point transfer of 1 point. Now that's at a 1-to-1 basis because we're not using neutrals to send the transfer. Now we'll move on to the Western Allies' technological advances phase. Currently they have aerial reconnaissance, which is a P1 technology. And they draw the card A2, planned barrages. Well, they don't have the A1 technology, so that card is going to be returned to the deck. And then we'll shuffle that. The card does say if the opponent has A2, you may take A1. Well, Germany has A1 only, so not yet. So that card is returned. And the last step is our regroup phase, and we would normally determine air superiority, but once again, Germany doesn't have any aerial technology, so that will allow us to use our tactical air superiority counter and place that wherever we wish. Normally we'd roll a die, and Germany would roll a die, and the difference would be the number of tactical air units you can place. Well, Germany can't roll, so we're going to get at least 1. And we have to decide where we're going to place that. And we know Germany has to retake the Rhine, so I'm going to place that tactical air in the Rhine. That'll end the Western Allies' turn, and we'll move on now from the Western Allies to the Eastern Allies. And we'll begin by drawing an Eastern Allies event card. The event is revealed to be event number 32, Entente pressures Serbia, 1914 plus, a DRM of +2. First attack this turn by a Serbian army against an Austro-Hungarian army. So that is active right now. We'll move on now to the Eastern Allies movement phase. Most of the Russian units are spent. They only have basically 2 viable armies in the Ukraine. That would be the 3rd and the 8th armies. Serbia has a spent 2nd army and an active 1st army. We'll have to decide what we're going to do if there'll be any movements. And I think the best thing that the Russians can do would be to transfer the spent 12th army from the Ukraine. We'll transfer that into Prussia. And then we'll see if we can rebuild those armies and try to defend that and deny the Central Powers, that very important production center. I think that's it for the movement phase. So we'll move on to the combat phase. And the only combat, I think, is going to be in Serbia. And since they have that Entente Pressures Serbia card, we're going to get a +2 DRM for an attack on an Austro-Hungarian army. So I think what will happen is they're going to do it. The first Serbian army is going to attack the Austro-Hungarian 5th Army in Hungary. It'll give them a +2 modifier to the roll. And here's the roll. Austro-Hungary lost, and that was Serbia won 6-3 with that attack. That is going to spend Serbian 1st and the Austro-Hungarian 5th. But Serbia doesn't have another army to follow up the attack, so that is as far as it's going to go. So that Entente Pressures Serbia card has been used, and I think that's the limits of the combat. And we're going to move on to our production phase, and we're going to receive our transferred production. So Serbia is going to gain 1 production point, and they're going to use that to refit the Serbian 1st Army, and that's the extent of what their production is going to be. Russia is up next. They are going to be getting a total of 4 production points, and they're going to have to use those to refit their armies. They're going to spend 3 to refit the armies in Prussia. So all those Russian armies will be refit, along with the Russian 2nd Army in Brest-Litovsk. That will be the complete use of the Russian production for the turn. That's going to complete the Eastern Allies portion of the turn. We'll move on to the Central Allies. And we'll begin with their event draw. But before we draw our event card, the Ottoman Empire declares war on the Triple Entente. So we're going to see the forces of Turkey being deployed to the map. Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire, is definitely the sick man of Europe. There's no doubt about it. They have a total of 4 armies, of which 3 are spent, and they have a total production of 1. We begin by placing the 1st Turkish army in Gallipoli, the 2nd spent Turkish army in Anatolia, the 3rd spent Turkish army in Mizoram, and the 4th spent army in Damascus. And as that Turkish front opens, the British are going to receive some armies. The British are going to receive the spent Mediterranean Expeditionary Force in Sinai and the full-strength IRF in Basra, and I believe that stands for Iraq Expeditionary Force, but I'm not sure. Finally, the Russians also get an army, this on the Caucasus front. They're going to gain the spent Caucasus army in Kars. That's going to form our Ottoman front, Near East front. Now this front, based on how wide and widespread it is compared to some of the other fronts, you'll notice that there's basically 3 tracks. You have the Caucasus track, the Iraq track, and the Levant track, I guess, ranging from Sinai, Jerusalem to Damascus. Now you'll notice that those are squares, and there's some rules, special rules that will apply to these. It says these squares shaped areas are linked together on 3 separate tracks. Due to the logistical difficulties of supporting troops in these regions, they have the following restrictions. A maximum of 1 army may occupy each square. Armies may not move into or through already occupied square areas, nor may any square area have more than 1 army pass into it, through or out of it in any given movement phase. Thus, 2 armies may not swap spaces among the square areas and a connected square track will not have an army both exiting and entering from the same direction on the same movement phase. Technology card abilities and any units or markers associated with technology cannot be placed in these regions. A maximum of 1 trench in each square. So we have some different dynamics in this area. Now the regions of Anatolia and Gallipoli will operate just as they normally do, but the other square locations have those limitations. Our Central Allies event is First Line Formations, 1914 to 1915. Place on a Central Army's army. It's going to gain them a +2 die roll modifier in any combat. Remove the marker at the end of 1915 if not used. And I think I'm going to place that marker on the Austrian 2nd Army in Galicia. And now we'll move to the Central Allies movement phase. And I don't think there's going to be much movement. More than likely, Austria-Hungary is going to launch an attack into Brest-Litovsk, possibly into Poland. And those are already in combat position in Galicia. The Turks only have one viable army, and that's the First Army in Gallipoli. So I think we are just going to stand pat with the Turks until we can start rebuilding some of those spent armies that they have. And we'll move on now to our combat phase, and I think we'll start in Galicia, and we're going to launch an attack into Brest-Litovsk. And I'm going to nominate the Austrian 2nd Army as the attacking force, and that's with the first line formations. That's going to give them a +2 to the attack. Now we have available Austrian artillery, heavy artillery, but I'm going to save that for the exploitation, I think. It's a little bit of a risk. So the Austrians will be attacking the 2nd Russian Army in Brest-Litovsk. The 4th has already been spent. We'll be gaining a +2 for the Austrians. Here's the roll. And unfortunately, the Austrians rolled a 1, and that would give them a total of 3. The Russians rolled a 4. Not good. So that is going to consume the first line formations token, and the 2nd Army is going to be spent, unfortunately. And we have a total of 2 other armies remaining. I think we're going to utilize those. We're going to spend the Austrian heavy artillery, and we're going to nominate the 3rd Army for an attack on the Russian 2nd in Brest-Litovsk. That will allow us to roll 2 dice and choose the higher of the 2. So we'll make the roll, see if we can damage them. That time the Austrians rolled a 4 and the Russians rolled a 2. So that is going to spend the 2nd Army. And now we have a decision to make. We have only the 4th Austrian Army that is ready for offensive operations. That is going to be a tough one. I think we're going to cancel the attack. We would have the big push counter. I forgot about that. We would have the big push counter. That would give us an extra +1 for the attack. But we'd have to move up the 4th Army if they were successful, and that would leave us with 3 armies, and that's it. So would that be enough if the Russians relocated a couple armies into the Ukraine and attacked us? Boy, these are tough decisions. I'm going to do it. We're going to attack with the 4th Austrian Army using the big push, and we'll attempt to force the Russians into retreat. We're going to gain a +1 for our combat roll. Here's the roll. The Austrians won 4-3, which is outstanding. That is going to send the Russians into retreat. Even these retreats are tough decisions. I guess the Russian 4th is going to retreat into Minsk. The Russian 2nd will retreat into Ukraine. And we have to advance the 4th Austro-Hungarian Army into Brest-Litovsk. And that's all we can do. There are no other viable formations left on that front. So we've managed to isolate Poland, which is great, and maybe the Germans can make some advancements into that area in the spring of 1915. The only other viable Austrian army is the Austrian 6th in Bosnia, and I think we're just going to stand pat, and we're getting an extra 2 production from the previous turn, so I think we will just stand pat and repair our armies as best as we can. All right, we'll move on to the production phase, and we'll begin with the sick man of Europe, Turkey. They are going to have 1 production point available to them. So they're going to be relying on Germany to supply them with production points in the future. We have 1 production point. I think what we should do is use that to refit the 4th Army in Damascus, and then we can threaten the Mediterranean Expeditionary Force in Sinai. We have to be careful because the British have the ability to make the Gallipoli landing, and that could be a problem for us. So by placing pressure on the MEF in Sinai might make them think twice before attempting an amphibious invasion. I actually regret not advancing the 4th Army to Jerusalem, and we would have had a full-strength army available right on the doorstep of the MEF. That was an oversight on my part. We'll move on now to Austria-Hungary. They have a production value of 3. And they're also going to be gaining 2 points for the German transfer that we had last turn, so we'll have a total of 5 production points to use this turn. And we're going to use that to refit some armies. We'll be refitting the 5th for 1 point, and we are going to refit the 4th Army in Brest-Litovsk for 1. We'll spend 2 more to refit the 2nd and 3rd Armies. And I think as a precaution, I'm going to spend the last point and refit the 10th Army in Austria. Italy could come into the war at any time, and if they do, we're going to be having the, as the history had it, the 97th Battle of the Isonzo, and more than likely we're going to need that extra strength there to guard against an Italian attack. All right. The only step remaining for the Austrians is to, this is the regroup phase, and we'll reset our heavy artillery. Now, we could have advanced that heavy artillery into Brest-Litovsk. That was another option I had. I chose not to. I'm thinking that we might end up striking towards the Ukraine next time if we can build up our strength enough. All right. And that's going to bring this turn to a close, and I think we'll close the video here as well. My biggest regret in this game so far is when I had the chance, when we were having that first battle in Belgium. We had the Battle of Mons against the British Expeditionary Force, and I had 2 rerolls. Now the British rolled a 6, so I would have needed a 5 or 6. I was getting a +1 at that point because of the big push. So I had a 1 in 3 chance of being able to defeat them, and I didn't use that reroll at that point, and I should have. And that had a cascade of events. We never got into the Somme, and now look, we've got the French have recaptured Alsace-Lorraine. We've got the Russians occupying Königsberg in Prussia, and we've got trouble. We're going to have to retake the Rhine, and I don't know how we're going to do that. There are 4 French armies in the Rhine, So I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle this, but we'll find out in the next video. We've got our Turkish allies now, and maybe we can use that as a side front to distract the British, perhaps. Well, thank you so much for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club, and I hope you're enjoying this playthrough. And I hope to see you again for the next episode, which is going to be our Spring 1915 turn. We're going to be adding additional event cards to our draw decks. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Good night.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you've a Lucifer to light your flag, smile, boys, that's the style. What's the use of